Before you scroll, promise me one thing, stay with me to the last 10 seconds, because that's when I'll tell you what I never told anyone in this town. It's the same thing that kept me silent for years, the same thing that made me look at my daughter's face in the bathroom mirror and ask, what kind of father am I? This story starts at a bus stop where three men said something dirty to a woman who was just trying to get home. It ends with a single dad, me, breaking a silence that had wrapped itself around my throat like a rope. And when you hear why I finally spoke, you'll understand why I can't be quiet ever again. My name is Sammy. I'm a quiet man, one of those people you see every day and never really notice. I work nights unloading boxes at a wholesale market, mornings cleaning classrooms at the primary school, and in between I nap on a thin mattress while my daughter, Hannah, draws constellations on our ceiling with glow-in-the-dark stickers. She's 12, the kind of kid who says, "thank you," to the bus driver and shares her lunch if someone forgot theirs. If you ask me what I'm proudest of, I won't mention my 2 jobs or the calluses on my hands. I'll say her name and feel my chest warm. Silence is how I survive the day. At work, you don't stir the pot if you want your shift next week. In our neighborhood, you don't return a stare with a stare, you look down and keep moving. That was the lesson I learned the day my wife, Layla, didn't come home from the clinic. A sudden hemorrhage, the doctor said. There were questions I could have asked, shouting I could have done, but I swallowed my grief and signed the papers, thinking silence would protect what was left of us. It didn't bring her back. All it did was teach me how to fold myself into smaller and smaller shapes until I barely existed. The afternoon it happened, the heat lay on the city like a blanket we couldn't kick off. I was early to pick up Hannah, so I stood by the bus stop outside the school, a line of students trailing out the gate like a ribbon. A young woman stood near the timetable, clutching a tote bag with sunflowers stitched on the front. I recognized her vaguely, the new music teacher, the one who had convinced the principal to let children borrow a guitar for the weekend if they promised to return it. Ms. Nita. She had a face that looked like it had been made for laughing. That day it was set in worry, maybe because 3 men in dusty work boots had decided she was a target. They weren't loud at first. A cough that became a comment too familiar in this city, soft words sharpened by intention. A crude question about her body. A whistle drawn out like a snake from a basket. Ms. Nita shifted, hugged the tote closer, and stared hard at the bus route, as if she could climb into the printed lines and escape. I kept my eyes on my shoes. Silence, remember. The kind that pretends to be neutral. The kind that leaves the victim alone with the victim alone with the vultures and tells itself it's not part of the circle. Hannah ran toward me, braid bouncing. She looked past me to the bus stop, and her smile fell like a stone into a shallow pool. "Baba," she whispered, tugging my sleeve. "They're bothering her." I still didn't move. The men were laughing now, leaning in. One of them said something so foul I felt it like a slap. The words drifted to my daughter's ears. I saw her eyes go dull, no, not dull, older. Like a candle being taught the shape of darkness. "Baba," she said again, voice small and firm. "Please. This is where I'm supposed to tell you," I roared like a lion, that I walked over and ended it. But the truth is I froze. I let fear crawl up my throat and clamp my jaw shut. Fear for my job. Fear for the next day when these men would be waiting as I cycled to work in the dawn. Fear that I'd make it worse. All those fears collected into a boulder inside me, and I carried it by doing nothing. But then something happened I didn't expect. Ms. Nita turned. She didn't cower, didn't look for a rescuer. She looked at the men, then at the students around her, at the gate where the guard pretended not to see, at the parents like me who formed a ring of silence, and then she looked straight at me. Not as a stranger. As someone who existed. For a heartbeat, I felt the weight of her gaze like a hand extended across a river. Shame is an engine. It sputters, coughs, and then, if you let it, roars to life. I stepped forward. My voice came out thick, rusty with disuse. "Enough," I said. "Leave her alone." The men smiled like I'd told a joke. The tallest one leaned on the bus stop sign, a toothpick between his teeth. "Who are you, uncle?" he sneered. "Her bodyguard." "I'm a father," I said. "And these are children." I could feel Hannah clutching the back of my shirt. I could also feel everyone else's eyes, the way a crowd grows a hunger when something breaks its boredom. The guard shifted, decided suddenly it was the perfect moment to adjust his cap. The tall one took a step toward me. "You think you can talk to us like that? You think words change anything?" I didn't plan the next part. My hand reached for my phone, and I hit record. My face was in the frame, not theirs. I didn't want revenge. I wanted witness. "My name is Sammy," I said, voice shaking. "I'm not a hero. I'm tired. But I'm not going to be quiet while men talk like this to women in front of our children. If I'm the only one speaking right now, that's okay. Tomorrow, I hope I'm not." Maybe it was the phone, or the fact that I didn't threaten them, or maybe they just got bored. The men cursed and walked off, shoulders bumping each other. The bus breathed up to the curb. Ms. Nita exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for 20 minutes and offered me a tight, grateful nod before stepping on board. I watched the doors close on her sunflower tote bag and wondered if she would think of my face later and feel safe or feel small. I didn't ask. The bus swallowed her. That night, after Hannah fell asleep, I watched the shaky video on my old phone 3 times. I looked like a man who wasn't sure he belonged to his own life. I didn't intend to post it. Then I remembered how Hannah's eyes had changed when she heard those words. I uploaded the clip with a caption, "Silence is not neutral." I put the phone down like it might bite me. By morning the video had slipped into more phones than I could count. Some people called me brave. Some called me stupid. 3 different accounts told me I should mind my own business if I wanted to keep my job. One message was from a number I didn't recognize: "You should watch your back." Another was from Ms. Nita: "Thank you. I shouldn't have to be grateful for basic decency, but I am. Are you okay?" I typed a reply and erased it twice. Finally, "I'm learning how to be." At the market that night, the supervisor docked my hours. No reason given, just a shrug and a glance at the men stacking crates who averted their eyes when I looked at them. On the way home, someone spit near my shoes and called me hero like it was a disease. At the mosque, an elder told me gently that it was better to advise in private, not make a scene. I nodded because arguing with elders is a different kind of disrespect, but inside I felt a wire tighten. At the school gate the next day, something else started to happen. A mother I'd never spoken to before whispered, "Thank you," without meeting my eyes. A boy from year 5 saluted me like a soldier and then blushed crimson. The guard, yes, the same one, said, "Sammy, bye, if there's any problem, tell me," like the previous day had been a dream he hadn't slept through. And then there was Hannah. As we crossed the street, she slipped her hand into mine and squeezed. "Were you scared?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Me too," she whispered, small smile blooming. "But you still talked." That night, I lay under the glow-in-the-dark constellations and finally asked the question I had been dodging for years: what did my silence protect? The answer hurt. It didn't protect my job. It didn't protect my daughter. It definitely didn't protect any woman whose path crossed a pack of bored, cruel men. It only protected the part of me that wanted to stay wrapped in the comfort of not being responsible for anything I could pretend wasn't my problem. The next morning, I woke up and decided that if the video had made noise, I would give it a direction. I didn't have a plan. Just a sentence buzzing like a bee in my chest: "We can build the world we want to live in, but we have to build it out loud." The first meeting was 3 people, me, Ms. Nita, and my neighbor, Auntie Shahida, who once dragged a young man by the ear off a bus for refusing to give up a seat to a pregnant woman. We sat in the school courtyard after hours, knees touching, the city sighing around us. We made a list on a scrap of cardboard pulled from the recycling bin, walk her home. Groups after evening classes. A WhatsApp tree for parents and teachers. A sign at the gate that said, in plain letters, if you see harassment, you are not a bystander, you are a neighbor. We didn't know how to print the sign, so we painted it ourselves with tempera from the art room. It looked like a child had made it because a child had. Hannah insisted on painting the Y in you with a tiny star. The second meeting was 20 people. The third was 50. Some came to be seen, some came to listen. Most came because the video had made them look at their own mornings and evenings and realize they had been swallowing the same stone I had. Even a few men in dusty work boots came, hands jammed in pockets, looking like they'd wandered in by accident. No one shamed them. When you turn a problem into a person, you lose the person. We asked them to hold flashlights on the dark walkways after tuitions. To stand in pairs by the bus stop at dismissal. To learn a phrase, that is not okay. Please stop. And say it like a spell that breaks the room's habit. You want to know if it worked? Let me tell you a story inside the story. A week after the meetings began, 3 teenage boys loitered by the corner shop, tossing a bottle cap between them like it was an important sport. A university student in a black abaya waited for her ride. One boy said something ugly. The second laughed. The third glanced up, and saw Auntie Shahida and me a few steps away, fluorescent vests over our clothes, holding thermoses of tea and paper cups. He went quiet first. The laughter died in his friend. The first boy looked at his shoes. We didn't shout. I said the phrase, that is not okay. Please stop. Auntie poured tea into 3 cups and handed them over like peace offerings. The boys took the cups because refusing hot tea from an auntie takes a kind of courage they didn't have. The boy who'd spoken first mumbled, sorry, APA. The student lifted her chin and thanked auntie for the tea. The boys lingered, then wandered off, the bottle cap forgotten under a bench. Maybe you think that's too easy. It wasn't. The next day those same boys tagged a wall with a slur. We spent our Saturday repainting it. We added flowers because Hannah said beauty sticks better than warnings. On Sunday, the boys came back with a bucket of water and a rag. They hadn't been told to. They scrubbed the paint that had splashed onto the curb. Sometimes it takes repeating a new language before your mouth forgets the old one. Not everyone liked what we were doing. The supervisor at the market called me into the office and told me clearly, I could keep my shifts if I kept my head down. He said all this talk of harassment was making customers uncomfortable. I thought about my rent. I thought about Hannah's school books. I thought about how my wife's laughter used to fill our kitchen, and how it had disappeared without my protest. I took a breath and said, then I'll keep my voice. You can keep your shifts. I walked home with my last pay envelope folded in my pocket and a fear spreading through my ribs like frost. That's when my phone buzzed. It was the principal. I'd been cleaning his floors for 2 years. He never messaged. Sammy, can you come by tomorrow? We need a parent liaison for our new safety program. Part-time, but with the chance to grow. I think you'd be good at it. I laughed out loud on the sidewalk. The city stared, then pretended again not to see. The first day I wore the badge that said parent liaison, I felt like a child playing dress-up. But when the early winter sun slid behind the school walls and the gate opened, I stood by the bus stop in a neon vest and saw something I hadn't seen there before, ease. Girls laughed without watching their own shadows. Boys argued about cricket instead of women's bodies. The guard stood taller, not because of the vest, but because he had permission to be brave. He started keeping a small notebook for reporting incidents, and when a vendor made a rude gesture at a student, the guard, carefully, wrote it down and said he would speak to the headmaster. No one threw a punch. No one spat. The vendor apologized the next day and moved his cart down the block where the school wasn't in his view. But listen, this is the part you promised to stay for. One evening, as the courtyard emptied, Ms. Nita found me by the sign we had painted. She held her sunflower tote like an old friend. "I've been wanting to ask," she said, "why did you post the video? You didn't even know me." I had an answer ready, the easy one about Hannah and the children, about the town I wanted her to inherit. But she had looked at me that day like I existed, and I promised in the hook I'd tell you the thing I never told anyone. So I said the quiet truth. When my wife died, I said, I was angry. Not at her, not at God. At myself. Because I realized how many times I had watched the world make her smaller and stayed silent. The nurse who called her sweetheart and didn't listen when she said her pain wasn't normal. The neighbor who told her to smile. The uncle who made jokes about her body after the baby, in our home, and I laughed like it was a favor. The day she didn't come back from the clinic, I wanted to break something in the hospital, but it was too late. Silence doesn't look like a crime. It looks like being polite while harm multiplies. So when those men spoke to you at the bus stop, I heard all the moments I had been late. I picked up my phone and tried, finally, to be on time. I expected her to cry, or to pat my arm with some gentle phrase. She didn't. She stood very still, like music had started somewhere only she could hear. "Thank you," she said, and it sounded different than the first thank you. Heavier. Truer. "You did something else that day, Sammy. You made space for the rest of us to speak, too." In the weeks that followed, the space stayed open. A shopkeeper taped our phrase to his counter. A tuk-tuk driver installed a second rearview mirror so women in the back could see the road, not just the driver's eyes. Two of the men from the first day, yes, even them, showed up to a meeting. They didn't apologize into a microphone, they brought bottled water and sat in the back and listened. Later, one of them approached me in the parking lot. "I have a sister," he said, staring at his boots. "I never thought. I'm trying to think now." "Thinking is where change starts," I told him. "What you do after you think is what makes it real." We started calling what we were doing breaking the pattern. Because that's what harassment is, really, a pattern deep as a tire rut. And that's what silence is, the habit of stepping into that rut because it's easier than making a new path. You don't smash a rut with a hammer. You walk differently, one foot, then another, until grass grows over the old track and the new one is the way everyone goes without thinking. On the evening of our first community celebration, tea, samosas, a borrowed speaker that crackled when someone clapped too close, Hannah tugged my sleeve. "Baba," she said, "come." She pulled me to the sign at the gate. The paint had faded where the sun hit it every morning. A group of students stood there giggling, a paintbrush in each hand. "We're fixing it," one girl said. "And we're adding something. Under if you see harassment, you are not a bystander, you are a neighbor." They painted a second line in careful, wobbly script. "If you're scared, hold someone's hand. Fear is lighter when two people carry it." I felt something in my chest unclench. I looked up at the sky I had memorized from my ceiling, the constellations my daughter had arranged, and I thought about how light travels years to reach us. How we are always seeing stars as they were, not as they are now, and still we let them guide us home. That night, I recorded another video. Same face. Same trembling in my voice. Only this time I wasn't alone by a bus stop. Behind me were parents, teachers, students, shopkeepers, the guard, even the boys who had scrubbed paint from the curb. "My name is Sammy," I said. I used to believe silence kept me safe. Maybe it did, for a while. But it kept other people in danger. Today, I'm asking you to break a small silence wherever you are. Not with a fight. With a sentence, with a presence, with a hand held out. Don't wait for a hero. Be someone who makes it normal to care, in public. When I finished, I didn't feel like a lion. I felt like a man who had finally set down a boulder. Hannah leaned her head on my arm. Baba, she whispered, when I'm older, I'm going to be brave like this every day. You don't have to wait to be older, I said. You're already doing it. So here we are, at the last 10 seconds, the part 1 promised you. People will tell you this world belongs to the loudest, the strongest, the ones with the biggest fists. I am not loud. I am not strong. I have small fists and a bigger fear than I'd like to admit. But I learned this: courage is not a roar. It is a steady voice that refuses to disappear. It is a father who was late once and is trying, every day, to show up on time. If you're listening to me now, take this with you when you put down your phone: silence is not neutral, and kindness is not quiet. Walk someone home. Hold out your hand. Break the pattern. And if your voice shakes the first time, let it. Mine did too,